Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the Poisoner's Almanac. I am your co-host. What's his name?
I'm Rebecca.
Somebody in a comment on socials called me "What's his name" because they couldn't remember my name.
I'm pretty sure they were joking, but yeah.
Were they?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you know what? Honestly, I've been married to you for like 13 years, and when my brain is not functioning, I'm like, what's his name? Adam. Yeah. So.
What's his name? Jeez.
What's my name? Oh my God. I'm going to go to sleep. Speaking of sleep, I wish I could go back to sleep. It's actually snowing right now in Georgia. It is a rare occurrence.
A rare occurrence. Once a decade, we get snow.
Yeah.
And once a Paleolithic age, we get a hurricane.
I don't know. They're saying that's going to become like more common.
Please stop saying what you're saying.
I don't
want to think about
either,
any hurricanes.
Look, we're in the part of Georgia that is mostly pine trees. And so, like...
Yes. We have half as many pine trees as we did before the hurricane.
And pine trees grow relatively quickly. So, like, they're going to keep coming back and falling on the power lines and on houses, unfortunately. We've had lots of people here with terrible situations with trees falling on their house and during the hurricane. And now it's snowing, and my daughter's in school. Usually they cancel. Here in Georgia, they cancel schools and stuff. And I know, like, up north, y'all are probably scoffing at that. But, like, we don't have the same, like, preparation stuff for roads that maybe y'all do. We don't do the whole salting roads thing. We don't have chains for tires or none of that. We don't have anything. And people here can't drive when it rains. So you can imagine, like, and I only took her because she's, like, literally 30 seconds from my house. She's not that far. The school's not that far from our house. So, like, if I have to, I'll walk. I'll probably cuss the entire time, but I'll do it.
We have a plan, and it will involve lots of cussing.
But no, they made it a half day, 10 minutes before the school doors opened. They were waiting and waiting and waiting. And they're like, we're watching the weather. They're notorious for this county is notorious for never closing.
Yes.
They almost didn't close before the hurricane.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they literally, like, when the hurricane happened, they were like, you know what? Our parking lot is flooded, but you can come in this direction and it'll be fine. And then, like, the next day they were like, all right, fine, we'll shut down. And that was when, it went crazy.
And all the people that message went out to had not showered because all of their power is out.
Yeah. And they're notorious for it. But, like, so today it's actually coming down pretty good, and it never snows here. Mm-hmm. So people, like, my worry is for the buses. Because, they don't keep the tires up on them buses. They don't.
Well.
So
it's, I'm just so glad that the power is still on and that I am inside in my house that we pay for with my beautiful wife. Very cozy.
It didn't sound right when you said that. You pay for with your beautiful wife. Am I your currency? I don't appreciate that. I think you need to restructure your sentence.
I regret nothing. Story time. I escaped a religious cult 7 years ago. Without going into too much detail here, let me just say it was an extremely difficult journey. My mental health spiraled downhill, and I thankfully had enough presence of mind to seek out a therapist to work through what was going on with me. My therapist helped give me context to all the wild things I'd walked away from. He was kind, patient, and guided me through what my new normal might look like. I had never had healthy boundaries in my life. Therapy helped show me that as a result of being in a cult or high control group, I had never fully become my own person. It's a shocking thing to learn at the age of 32. I learned how to communicate to the people around me what I was going to do, and more importantly, not do with my time, energy, and resources. BetterHelp is the sponsor of this episode, and they're on a mission to make starting therapy easier. BetterHelp is a platform where therapists and their clients can communicate effectively and get the most out of therapy. There's a journal inside the platform for personal reflection, and there are group sessions on a number of different topics available every day. Starting therapy is easy with BetterHelp. Fill out a questionnaire, and you'll match with a therapist in as little as a couple of days. One of the best features of BetterHelp is that if the first therapist doesn't feel like the right fit, you can easily switch to another one until you find someone you really connect with. They carefully make sure therapists on the platform are well qualified, and their customer support team is there to help if you have any questions. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust. If you're struggling and think you'd benefit from a therapy session, go to betterhelp.com/almanac or choose the Poisoner's Almanac during sign-up and get 10% off your first month of therapy. So that's going to take us to a little bit of housekeeping for the old podcast. Make sure you follow us on the platform you're listening on. Thank you in advance for leaving a 5-star review on that particular platform. Those function like a digital tip jar to push the podcast further into the algorithm and to the ears of listeners just like yourself who have not yet discovered the wonderful world of Poison's true crime history. My wife, you get it. Make sure to follow us on socials. We got links in the show notes, particularly the podcast Instagram, which is Poisoners_Almanac. When you follow us there, be sure to, if you're listening on your phone, screenshot from your phone and post that photo, then tag us in that photo. And we're going to share it to our stories and, have all sorts of fun, just interacting with listeners on the old social medias. The Patreon is up and running, ladies and gentlemen. A link is in there in the show notes there.
Where's it going?
What?
It's running. See, I make jokes.
I'm funny.
Mm-hmm.
Link is in the show notes. You can join the Patreon as a free member, but that you can also join as a paid member for only $1 United States dollar per month. And speaking of patrons, one of the perks of being a paid patron is you get shouted out by name on the old podcast. And those people are as follows: 87 Pens Girl, 71, Mara Santiago, Kate the Fairy, Grace Lahan, Genevieve, Nahev Shatri, Jay Went, Incan Hafner, Kiri Yorsek, Tay of Sunshine, Monique, Shane R., Sue Steves, James Mills, Megan Geiler, Liz B., Woolly Wolf NZ, Mama G., Nicole Rivers, Richard Miyako, whose name I am mispronouncing, I found out on Instagram. I don't know how to say Richard's name properly. I asked him to send me
Let me see it.
Like an audio message.
Let me see it.
I asked him to send me like an audio message of how to pronounce it.
It's going to take me a second to find it because my eyes aren't working yet. Where is it?
It's on the screen.
You know what? I'm going to throw the screen at your face. Let me see. Oh. Is it Miyako? Miyako?
That's what I've been saying. Miyako.
You've been saying Miyako. Like Iago.
Yeah. This is backwards. I'm normally helping you pronounce stuff.
Well, you know what? I can help too.
All right. You good?
Miyako?
Maybe.
I don't know.
We'll see. He's probably going to send us. He'll probably follow up with another message. Heather Nolan, Katie Rose, Kaylee, Sasha Rubel, who you have heard multiple times on the voicemail segment of our program. And we've got a fresh voicemail from her, by the way.
Oh, yes.
It's not today's voicemail, but we got another one from her.
Oh, they are very nice.
Excuse me, from them. Another voicemail from them.
Get it right, God.
Sorry. Her pronouns, they, them. Yes. All right.
They're very nice.
Maya Showstock, Maggie's Yarn, Ogre the Viking, Lynn Rocket, Brett Moser, Zaid, Neil Houdini, Nicole Crane, Jefferson Vargas, Carmen Q, Sarah G, Knittin' Ninja, Estar, Olive Octopus, Betsy Rich, Terrorsaurus Hex. I respect that name so much.
Indeed.
T-Bug, Christine Moljadi, Morgan Brittingham. Is it Clara Jurisons, also known as Blau Frosch? Vix, Caitlin C, Anne Maria, Carl Ziegler Jr., Clyde, Jennifer Wilson Richter, Macaulay Sterland, Too Fidgety, Wendy G, Elena MK, Vilma Anderson. I cannot help but say that name of the night. Vilma Anderson? I just want to say it that way. The Dutch do not say this.
Oh my gosh.
We've been watching this guy on socials who's Dutch, and he does these hysterical comparisons of like how stoic and uninterested Dutch people are.
And I love
being alive.
I love it. I think I was born in the wrong country, to be honest.
You were 100%, but I'm glad you were born here. Caitlin Martin, Pungrammed 101, Minnesota SPT for Student Physical Therapist. What's up? Represent. Michael McCombs, Tasha, Stuart Slattery, Prim Risen, Simone Valdez, Christian Skredergaard. I think I'm pronouncing that right. That's fun.
He said you said it right last time. So however you said it. Did you say it like you said last time?
Skredergaard. Yes.
He's from Denmark. I know.
We'd like
Jealous.
to go, please.
I know. I want to travel.
Somebody, I forgot who sent us the message. They have a place in Vienna that they say we could. If you give me enough notice, you could stay there on your European vacation.
Oh, nice.
And you don't realize how serious we're taking that.
I'm just waiting for, all these airplanes to stop like exploding and stuff. Catching on fire. Fire.
Okay, we've got Tina at Have Not Had My Coffee, which is a great, I
need more coffee, but something about coffee lately makes me fall asleep. I don't know if it's the ADHD or if it's the hypothyroidism.
Becca can have a venti caramel ribbon crunch frappuccino.
Or any kind of I drink immediately. I can go anywhere and get something caramel, but or just coffee in general. But it just makes me pass out. Yeah. Just out like a light.
Maria Anna, Bonnie, Oma D, Renelle Alara, and welcome some new patrons: Kristen Arnold, Aaron Carey, and Lynn Simpson. Those three are brand new since last week. Thank you for joining the Patreon. Call your therapist.
Oh, I haven't listened. I don't know if I've listened to this week's of theirs.
Yeah, if you guys don't listen to I Think Not, it's a hysterical podcast.
Not safe. I don't think it's safe for work though. It's probably pretty explicit. It's safe for hilarious.
Work. Oh man,
hilarious.
We listen to it in the car on date night when we're driving to and from dinner.
They crack. Yeah, they make me laugh so hard.
Joey Taranto.
Yeah, he's great.
Let's see. Please send us questions or content suggestions to the podcast Instagram with a comment or a DM. Also, another perk for paid patrons is leaving us a voicemail that we play right here on the podcast. And today's voicemail comes from Betsy Rich, whose given name is Blair, but she's Betsy Rich on all socials and such. Let's hear it. If I can scrub back. Wait, got to refresh that screen. There we go.
I think this is only the third time I've tried to record this, so I'm gonna try to make it solid gold. You've been loving the bubonic plague.
Same.
Oh shoot! I guess I should say this is Canada. And yeah. Anyway, bubonic plague. Yay! Fantastic. Love long episodes that are 2 hours. I just wanted to say that I was sad to hear that Rebecca doesn't like her southern accent, or has been told to use it, maybe try to dim it down, because I grew up with family who was from Texas. They lived in Tyler, and my uncle Wayne was an electrocardiologist, and he was like one of 2 people who could do his job in the whole continent. And my aunt was a professor, and she had her master's. So growing up, whenever I heard a southern accent, I actually attributed it to really well-rounded, intelligent people, and that's kind of the same thing I think now when I hear southern accents. So not everybody thinks negatively of that, because it's kind of silly to judge somebody's intelligence on their accent.
Exactly.
Or how they speak. Anyway, love you both. Bye.
We love you too. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I remember, I don't know if I told this story. I probably did, because I've been forgetting a lot of things lately. Like last week when we shared that exact same voicemail that we did before or something. Yeah.
Yeah, we totally.
My brain has been, since before the holidays, my brain has been just razzle dazzled. I don't even know what that means, but I just came out with it. So
yeah, we accidentally repeated a voicemail from Sasha. Our mistake. Our brains were mush. Last Friday morning, we couldn't put it together. Anyway,
I mean, they still kind of are, but it's cool.
Yeah, let's not pretend.
But like the forgetfulness, the forgetting.
So that is such a kind thing for Blair to say. Let's see. My mother was the first person in her family to finish high school. And she was also the first person in her family to finish college. She went back to college as a 30-year-old with 3 young children and got her teaching degree. So 30, 34, 35 years of age, she becomes college educated. And then between myself and my sisters, there are 1, 2, 3. There are 5 college degrees. And now, between myself and my wife, there are 4. Becca has 2 of her own. And she could probably get 3 more. Who knows? Who
really
knows?
like school, though.
You love school.
I love it.
You're probably going to end up with a PhD in something.
Something that I probably don't even use, but just because I wanted it.
Yes. But it's fine because your brain is sexy. There.
Well,
I said it. I regret nothing.
Okay.
And
well, like, I didn't even tell the story because I forgot I was telling a story.
Oh.
Remember, like I said, I don't know if I said the story and then I lost track. I'm going to get it together. No, when I worked at the science center.
Yeah.
It was my first job, actually, and it was great. I did star labs, like you go in the little blow up thing, you crawl in there, and the kids really excited about it.
Yes.
And you like have the projector and it's like the night sky, and you teach all the constellations and stuff because especially at that time, I was obsessed with astronomy. I mean, I still kind of am. Got this giant telescope here that we definitely need to use sometimes. The light pollution here is kind of sucky though. But yeah, I remember the guy who hired me, my boss at the time, was like basically tried to tell us to like limit the accent. It was like, it's better if you don't.
I forgot about that.
Better if you don't show that Southern accent because people won't take you seriously. I'm like, really? Seriously? So I've had a bit of a complex since then about it, I guess. But mine mostly comes out when I'm tired, angry, or sick. And when I'm sick, I'm tired and angry. So, but yeah, that's very nice of you to say. But yeah,
we appreciate that. But
it doesn't really matter.
If you're watching movies or TV, I mean, okay, if you watch "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou," I mean, it's the whole Southern accent. Yeah,
Belmar's been saved. That's
friend. Some of your folding money's come unstowed.
That's a funny movie.
It's fantastic. They do such a good job.
It's literally the Southern, isn't it?
Except for George Clooney, he can't do an accent to save his life.
But he's
anyways.
Well, I don't know. It's not the worst I've ever heard, but like
no, it makes sense in the movie.
But he's also supposed to be this guy who pretends to know like everything, but really doesn't. He's supposed to be the Odysseus.
Exactly.
Right.
He is a pathological enterpriser.
Well, this is like the Odyssey of the South, basically. Exactly. Isn't that what they were supposed to be?
Which is a great idea for a movie.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible, But yeah, having grown up here, I've, I've met all kinds. I had a classmate in PT school who was from so far south in Georgia that they could throw a rock into Florida. It was right there on the Florida-Georgia line. Shout out to the greatest country band ever.
Oh my God, no.
Just kidding. So his name was Daryl. And to give you an idea of how country he could be, he put in, there's a lottery in the state of Florida. No, excuse me. This was for Georgia. There's a lottery to put in to go gator hunting in the swamplands and way down South Georgia.
Are you just asking for it? I'm sorry.
So they, in order to protect their population,
bet that down.
They have a lottery system where you can only get the license to hunt gator from a lottery selection, and it helps them give hunters access, but it also keeps the gator population stable. And he told me a story. He was going to look at a used car, and he got the address from the guy. He pulls up to this guy's place way out in the woods. And he said, I pulled up, and they had a John boat as the gate on their fence. Those small little flat bottom boats you can fish from? That was their gate.
Well, now there's some like deep South Southerners, and like even people who live like deep in the Appalachian. They have their own smarts though. Like they have their own. Yeah. Like I'm not calling them dumb by any sense of the word, but like they have a certain kind of smart that you don't get anywhere else.
Oh, it's true.
As well because like they they have experience where they live, and they know how to do things that other people wouldn't. So I will say that for sure.
I had a patient. This has been years ago, about an hour south of here. She was in her 90s. She had, before she fell and broke her hip, she was field dressing a deer in her backyard. She knew how to get a deer up on a sling and completely harvest the meat and the hide.
Yeah, I mean.
So, anyways, pretty sure she had a Southern accent.
I can't even kill a spider without feeling bad. So
right, yeah, y'all get what we're saying. Very nice of you, Blair.
I wouldn't survive. I would just hold my stuffy and die.
Sure. So also, side note, Blair is, as we've come to learn through Instagram DMs, she is getting a care package together to send to us.
I think she just wants us to move to Canada. Which I get. Hey, I mean,
the healthcare's free.
Tempted.
Yeah. There is some hysterical public dialogue going on between the U.S. and Canada right now. I am just laughing every time. And like every time somebody from a Canadian politician responds, me and Becca just laugh hysterically. Like it's so much fun to watch.
They are like I'm just like slay.
Yes, the Canadians feel like the adult in the room. That's how we feel.
I mean, it's been that way for a while, though. I feel like.
So.
Yeah.
Anyways,
people always talk about how, like, around here, I feel like people always talk about how Canada can be kind of pacifistic. I'm like, I don't know. You don't mess with Canada because they may seem like chill, but like people forget that they've helped in a lot of situations.
They have. They've been involved internationally in a lot of conflicts for sure.
But like, they're definitely the mature older brother in the situation.
So that brings us to today's topic, my dear. What are we talking about?
Well, those who liked the bubonic plague are actually going to really enjoy this one too, I think, because it's probably going to be a two-parter.
Two-parter.
Oh my gosh.
Anytime somebody says two-parter, I cannot help but quote Sam Rockwell from Galaxy Quest.
Great movie. I love that movie so much.
Piece of art.
But so before I tell you exactly what it is, I'm going to ask you a question. What do Henry VII, John Keats, James Monroe, Henry David Thoreau, Anton Chekhov, Franz Kafka, George Orwell, Erwin Schrödinger of Schrödinger's cat frame,
Yeah.
And Eleanor Roosevelt have in common?
They all have a Telegram account? I'm just kidding. I don't know.
What's Telegram?
That's the site where the 70,000 member group was found.
Oh,
I'm totally joking. I said something absurd. Please tell me the real answer.
What if I add Doc Holliday to the list?
I'll be your huckleberry. There's another Southern accent. Oh, Johnny Ringo is an educated man.
God. So what was going on with him? Do you remember?
Tuberculosis.
Yep. This group, among many others, all died from tuberculosis.
How you doing, Doc? I'm dying, Wyatt. How are you?
Yeah. So, and obviously, like, that's only just a few that I mentioned. There were others who died from complications of tuberculosis, also others who had it and, dealt with it for a long time.
I had a patient way out in the woods. She was in her early 80s when I saw her. When she still had young children, she was put into a hospital for a year with tuberculosis. She still had young children. She could not hug them or really see them for a year. This is back in the 50s. So it was rough.
Yeah. My grandfather had tuberculosis. He was in the Navy during World War II.
Yeah.
And I think he was overseas when he had it. And I think the doctors were like, you are so lucky because they just came out with this new medication that we can actually treat it with.
Rebecca, you would not be here.
I don't know. Yeah, because he was much younger. He hadn't had children yet.
God.
He was a young thing back then. But yeah, he had tuberculosis as well. But thankfully, like I said, he was able to take medication for it. And we're a little ways off from talking about treatment. So let's get into exactly what it is. So we talked about the Black Death in our two-parter on the bubonic plague. And now I want to discuss what's termed the White Death, because it's been called White Death or the White Plague before.
Really?
Yeah.
Never knew that.
Yeah. So like I said, this is going to be a two-parter. There's just a lot to cover with this subject, from the disease itself to the morbid fascination of it, and even some stuff about vampires. So it's going to be...
I'm immediately...
It's going to be an interesting ride.
New York City.
Gosh, I love that show so much. Tuberculosis has been around for a very long time. We have evidence of it in mummies from 4,000 years ago. 2008, it was discovered in the remains of a mother and child who lived in a now submerged city of Israel. I hope I'm saying this right. Atlit-Yam. This was they would have lived 9,000 years ago. It's also believed to be written about in the Old Testament, though it was referred to as a wasting disease that would befall the Israelites if they disobeyed and turned away from God.
Well, as one does. You said it was a submerged city.
Yeah, it is now.
Under what body of water? The Mediterranean? Or?
I'm not sure, honestly. It's just not. Yeah, it's just, it's so
wild.
old, it's not even land anymore, I guess.
Wow.
So.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, the Israelites had lived among the Egyptians for a while, and it was pretty prevalent there at the time, so it would have been known as such. The word for this wasting disease to them would have been, I'm going to try to say this right, I looked it up, but I don't speak Hebrew, so y'all correct me if you do. Shakafeth. And the modern Hebrew word for tuberculosis is shakafeth. Shakafet. So it's very close, like, it probably sounds the exact same, but it's like spelled a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. Where's Dan McClellan?
Right. The Greeks also had their name for this disease, phthisis. The Greek physician Galen, who we've discussed before, he was the physician of the Roman empress. I'm sorry.
Not a chance.
Wow. The Roman emperor, Marcus Aurelius.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Marcus is like, yes, queen. I could see it. In 174 AD. And Galen described the symptoms of tuberculosis as fever, sweating, coughing, and blood-stained sputum. So, I mean, that's pretty much what, He also suggested that an effective treatment of tuberculosis should include fresh air, milk, and soy beverages.
Well, of course.
And everybody
knows if you get TB, you got to find those soybeans fast.
I mean, and I don't know. I'm wondering if maybe like they were giving people, because I know like milk when you have a cold is not great because it makes the secretions thicker.
That's right.
So maybe like they were thinking like drinking milk makes the blood not appear as often. I don't know.
Who knows?
I don't know. But that was a part of that. So it couldn't have felt good. I know that. Okay. Another well-known Greek physician, Hippocrates, described phthisis as the deadliest of diseases, especially for young adults, quite accurately defining its symptoms and the characteristic tubercular lung lesions, which we'll go into in a moment, why it's called tuberculosis.
Hippocrates, for whom the Hippocratic Oath is named.
Which doctors actually don't take.
They don't. Not anymore.
No. There's some weird stuff in that oath. Like,
they don't have time to take the oath because they're on the phone with insurance companies.
Yeah. Anyway. I don't think insurance companies do not take an oath that says do no harm.
Probably not.
So be aware of that. His suggestion for treatment included a diet of honey, barley, and wine. I'm
into the wine.
Well, wine probably like helps you, not feel the stuff as much. Well, also like alcohol can also open up the airways a little bit. I mean, depending. Like when I was in nursing school, we were taught by this lady. She was older and she was a home health nurse for a long time and like working out in the rural areas. I cannot say rural areas. Also, if y'all listened to the last bonus episode and you thought I said the word brewery weird, I get it. I cannot say that word. Brewery. I cannot say it. Yeah. So, yeah, if you listen to that and you're like, what is she talking about? Like brewery. I have a hard time saying
you exert yourself every time you have to say that.
It's hard. But anyway, yeah, back to the wine. But like, yeah, she was like at a house where someone was having an acute asthma attack. And like, they lived pretty far away from, a hospital. So even though they called EMS, like it was not looking great. And so like she found some whiskey and gave it to her and it just opened her airways right up for a time,
Yep. I think
And I'm not suggesting, like, if you have an asthma attack, go drink a bunch of whiskey.
This podcast is not medical advice.
This was just being resourceful in a desperate time.
Your Honor, we told the people.
Oh my gosh. And also honey, like, is good for a cough. I mean, it's not going to help tuberculosis. And I know honey has, like, you know, antibiotic type stuff going on with it.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be enough to get rid of tuberculosis. Like, it may help a cough, but yeah. Now, it has been used as a nice, like, antimicrobial ointment before, though.
Yeah,
so.
It's used in wound healing from time to time.
Now, the Greek orator or rhetorician Isocrates, which I'm just like isosceles, but it's Isocrates.
Did you say Isocrates?
Uh-huh.
Is that the Apple version of Socrates?
No. No.
Wait, is this a different person from Socrates?
Yes.
Oh. What?
His name is Isocrates. Look.
That's so close to Socrates.
But it's not Socrates.
This is the first time I'm literally hearing this for the first time.
Yeah, well, there you go. You're gonna love a name I'll give you in just a minute.
I'm so excited.
But he was the first author supposing that tuberculosis, which I'm calling it tuberculosis, it wasn't called that then, was an infectious disease, while Aristotle suggested the contagious nature of quote unquote king's evil, as it was also called, in pigs and oxes. Arrhenius, however, was the first person to describe the symptoms of the disease in his text. Y'all, I took Latin, and I'm probably going to get this wrong. De causis et signis diatornorum morborum.
Got it.
There you go.
Read it in 4th grade.
This was how he described it. Voice hoarse, neck slightly bent, tender, not flexible, somewhat extended, fingers slender, but joints thick. Of the bones alone, the figure remains, for the fleshy parts are wasted. That's why they call it a wasting disease. The nails of the fingers crooked, their pulps are shriveled and flat, nose sharp, slender, cheeks prominent and red, eyes hollow, brilliant and glittering, swollen, pale, or livid in countenance. Why it's called the White Death, because you're pale all the time. The slender parts of the jaws rest on the teeth as if smiling, otherwise of cadaverous aspect. So they look like death, basically. There you go, for brevity's sake. He recommends that those with such symptoms travel to high altitudes, travel by sea, and eat a good diet, and drink plenty of milk. There we are with the milk again. But, and honestly, we were kind of lied to, right? Like in the 90s, like, milk does a body good. And like, yeah, calcium is good for you, but like cow's milk can actually really hurt the digestive system if you're sensitive to it too. So
the big dairy,
it hurts my stomach. I can't do it.
The dairy industry had already organized into conglomerates by the time we were children in high school.
And then the whole cheese thing.
The food pyramid is hysterical.
I read something that said
Eat 6 pounds of bread every day.
No, it doesn't. Yeah. But I read somewhere that cheese was actually one of the top reasons for obesity in America. Cheese. So
it's unfortunate.
Yeah. But anyway, Vitruvius.
Oh, that's so much fun.
I knew you were going to love that one. Vitruvius, like the Lego movie.
Oh, this is true.
Well, it's funny because
it rhymes.
Well, it's funny because he was a Roman architect.
Yes, master builder.
And engineer.
Just to be clear, because we want you all on this journey with us, we're talking about the Lego movie.
I just said movie.
You did?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's. I don't listen to what you say. Don't worry.
You're deaf. That's fine. I've always said it. You're deaf. All those years playing music. Deaf.
So, the Lego movie is hysterical. The dialogue between Lord Business, which is played by Will Ferrell, and then Vitruvius, voiced by Morgan Freeman. It's hysterical. What a bunch of hippy dippy baloney that you made up.
So, yeah, he was an architect and engineer in the Roman period during the 1st century. And he noted that, quote unquote, cold in the windpipe, cough, pleurisy, phthisis, and spitting blood were common diseases in regions where the wind blew from the north to northwest. Yeah. And
that's my favorite.
Just out there with a finger in the wind.
Tuberculosis. Everybody's got to move.
And he advised that walls be built so as to shelter individuals from the winds. He might have just been looking for a job,
100%.
Like
I just love these all
advertising, like, don't want tuberculosis? Let me build you a wall. My God.
Like, I just the professional overlap for all these philosophers. Like in one breath, they're like, water is the essence of moisture. Also, tuberculosis is an infectious disease. Like, there's no. How are you an expert in both of these things? Anyway.
Well, they also don't know what infectious disease is yet. So they're thinking like...
No.
Yeah, they're thinking like... Well, we'll get to that. Okay. Now, there's also written records 2,300 to 3,300 years ago from China and India. It was also in the Americas before Columbus ever arrived. So, yeah, that was one of the few diseases that he didn't introduce over here. We can't say the same for smallpox, measles, mumps, influenza, cholera, malaria, typhoid, diphtheria, and scarlet fever.
Mm-hmm.
But evidence of tuberculosis was actually found in the remains of a Peruvian woman who lived at least 500 years before Columbus even set sail. One interesting, if not strange, theory of how it reached the Americas that I read about was by seals and sea lions who had contracted it in Africa, then migrated and spread it all the way over to South America, where hunters would have come into contact with it.
Now that is an unfortunate disease vector.
So, yeah, it's an interesting one. Now, it's believed that the Mycobacterium tuberculosis, which is the bacteria that causes the disease that we know today, originated 15,000 to 20,000 years ago in Africa and evolved in animals and or humans then as well. The genus Mycobacterium, however, is much older itself. Mycobacterium tuberculosis likely spread throughout the rest of the world via trade, migration, and warfare, as disease does.
Mm-hmm.
One source I found stated that it likely mutated from Mycobacterium bovis, which is like bovine tuberculosis, which is still a thing, and spread to humans through the drinking of milk. This is before pasteurization, obviously, or eating infected meat. And yes, you can become infected with bovine tuberculosis, among other things, by drinking what's called raw milk or unpasteurized milk.
That is never a good idea.
No, it's really not. It's really not.
Please stop. I wish we didn't have to say this, but please stop.
And like some people say, like they drink raw milk, but they boil it first. But I'm just like, that's you're pasteurizing it yourself in a way. So, okay.
Long medical sigh.
It's just, yeah. And tuberculosis is also related to leprosy. And when we go over the symptoms, you'll see some similarities. I know we haven't talked about leprosy or Hansen's disease, as it's also called, but we'll talk about that one too eventually.
I'm excited.
In the Middle Ages, a new form of tuberculosis emerged called scrofula, which affected the cervical lymph nodes. It was also called the King's Evil in England and France, and some believed it could be cured by the touch of a royal. That doesn't work. So, another method of treatment was to remove the infected gland or node, like they would lance it, drain it, remove the whole gland itself, whatever they felt like they had to do.
Okay.
That could not have been fun. Tuberculosis would not be known by its name. It has now until like the 1800s. So in 1834, the name tuberculosis was given to it by Johann Schonlein, and theories behind what exactly it was that caused it were debated, because everything was debated back then on what caused what, right?
Yeah, we haven't yet reached the era of microbiology.
We're about there, though, because in 1882, bacteriologist Robert Koch, identified, isolated, and cultured the bacillus that causes the disease, and his findings were published in the Society of Physiology in Berlin.
I hope he was protecting himself while he was working with that.
Yeah. There were other medical and scientific pioneers who attempted to figure out the disease before this and paved the way, of course, including Girolamo Fracastoro, who wrote a clear description about the contagious nature of tuberculosis in the 16th century. Théophile Laennec, a French physician, also fun fact, this guy invented the stethoscope originally to listen to the lung sounds of those with TB.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a fun fact. I think the stethoscopes back then, though, it was like you put it up to your ear and you put the other side right up to the chest. That the stethoscope was
like
that. Yeah, like
okay.
So yeah, he invented that.
Hmm.
But he also identified the pathological signs of the infection in 1819, and also that the disease can infect multiple parts of the body, which is a really rough part of the disease
Definitely.
of itself, which we'll talk about. In short, tuberculosis is caused by a very small rod-shaped bacillus that is pretty hard to kill by drying or with chemicals or anything like that. It is killed by direct sunlight, however, and we'll discuss some early treatment ideas that kind of play on that idea. Even today, there are people who believe that going outside will cure you of bacterial or viral infections. While getting some sunshine and consequently vitamin D is healthy.
Yes.
Don't forget your sunscreen, though. Which I know you can't. If you wear sunscreen, you can't actually absorb vitamin D, is from what I've heard. But I mean, you can also take vitamin D now. So, but I know sunshine's healthy. I can't stand it because it blinds me, and I can't stand bright lights. That's just me.
They're never considering the autistics.
Yeah, it bothers me, but yeah, and the sun hates me. So, but yeah.
What are some fighting words I could say about the sun?
But it doesn't like just kill the germs in you causing the illness. It's not like you go out in the sun and like the germs. I feel the germs dying. They're dying. They're literally like they're inside you at this time. So
yeah, you can't use sunlight to kill an in vitro infection.
Well, like what we're talking about with exposure to direct sunlight, we're talking about the bacteria or viral agents, not those already infected. So like bleach can kill microorganisms, but drinking it's not going to heal you. Don't drink bleach, please.
I feel like we shouldn't have to say this,
but here we are. The most common form, of course, is pulmonary tuberculosis. The disease just slowly eats away at the lungs, creating abscesses that are constantly leaking pus and causing respiratory problems. It's a very awful, awful disease. The lung infection may become so severe that it eats its way through the chest.
Yeah.
And now you can kind of see why it's cousins with leprosy, the eating away of tissue.
Would it be necrosis at that point? Like, how does it eat through tissue?
I mean, it can become necrotic. So
I suppose you're right. Yeah, because we see bacterial infections, infected wounds that just continue. And but it begins as bacterial infection.
Well, this is a very slow working illness too. It has evolved to realize that if it kills off its meal ticket too soon, it dies too, right? So
that is sinister.
It is a very slow moving illness. People will have this for years before dying. I mean, but not before treatment, But yeah, it's very slow working. It literally causes the victim to waste away, and they are often pale, emaciated, coughing up blood, and having trouble breathing, of course. The disease can lead to the eating away of major blood vessels as well, which could cause the patient to just bleed out and die. But usually the illness is slow and merciless, killing the victim very slowly.
All I'm saying is Doc Holliday from Tombstone, the Val Kilmer portrayal of Doc Holliday. He was pale of face. He looked ill. They did a great job.
It can be very morbid too, because it's morbid anyway, but like you can have blood vessels in your throat, and it can be like almost like esophageal varices, where it just bursts open and you're basically choking on your own blood. It's very, very awful. So yeah, if it eats away at your blood vessels, it can do that. A person may have tuberculosis, like I said, for years before dying from it, and it can actually sometimes go latent, like it can go not to sleep so much, but a person will seem to recover, but it's actually that they just have inactive TB. The immune system basically walls off the germ, knowing the germ by forming these nodules or tubercles, which in part is where it gets its name. While other germs might die in this state, Mycobacterium tuberculosis can stay alive much longer. It doesn't create endospores like anthrax does, and those endospores can survive for years without nourishment. But still, tuberculosis can break through this wall of immunity later on to become active again in the future, often leading to worse infection than the first time.
Wow.
It is contagious via droplets spread through the air, such as with coughing, sneezing, talking, any kind of, blowing of air out of your face.
Filming the movie
Not
Tombstone.
fun. Yeah. Honestly, like after becoming a nurse, I don't eat birthday cake anymore because they blow out the candles. People
Oh my
who
God.
blow out candles, like just all that. Okay.
Well, you just ruined that for everyone.
You're welcome. Just trying to keep you safe.
What can I say except you're welcome?
Now, it's not as contagious as influenza or the cold viruses. And while it can live in the air as droplets for a pretty long time, I'm talking weeks to months in good conditions. Like it's a survivor.
Okay.
Touching the belongings or clothing is just not as dangerous as, say, like the plague. Like it's not as contagious. It's not measles, which is one of the most contagious illnesses that we know.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that one too, but not today.
Oh, please.
So that doesn't mean, like I said, it can't be spread that way. It's just not as likely as, say, like the flu or other such germs. In 1994, a woman with active tuberculosis spread it to 4 other passengers on an 8-hour plane ride from Chicago to Honolulu. So you can see it's still pretty contagious. Make no mistake. And like they're in an enclosed situation where those germs are, they're in the presence of those microorganisms for much longer. So, not cool. It can also spread throughout the body very easily and affect every organ system, really. While we commonly know about it being a lung infection, infected sputum, you can also get into the esophagus and the rest of the digestive system and cause destruction there like it does to the lungs. It literally can eat away at your esophagus, your stomach, intestines. It can cause ulcers, leading to pain, trouble talking and swallowing, hemoptysis, vomiting blood, basically because now your stomach's involved. Your digestive system is involved. Bloody diarrhea. And again, if blood vessels are affected, bleeding out. It can get into the bloodstream relatively easy at this point as well, causing what's known as miliary tuberculosis. At this point, no organ or part of the body is safe. It can get into the urinary system, causing pain, inflammation, difficulty urinating, blood in the urine, and eventually kidney failure as it travels up to the kidneys. It can also affect the reproductive system, especially in women, as it can travel easily to the ovaries, fallopian tubes, and uterus, causing irreparable damage that would lead to sterility if the woman survives the infection. It can also travel to the liver, heart, brain, and meninges. It's just fun to say. These are the membranes that are surround your brain and your spinal cord. It can also eat away at bone, leaving victims permanently weak, disabled, and hunched over as it destroys the spinal column. It can literally snap your spine. It's bad. Yeah, it can be bad. It eats away at it. It can affect the skin. I believe lupus vulgaris is a term that is used with people who have it affecting their skin. It can show up as redness and ulcers, especially on the face, as it eats away at the eyes, ears, and nose, leaving a person permanently disfigured and scarred.
My goodness.
It can really...
Okay. I never knew all that about TB. Okay.
The great poet Walt Whitman actually died from complications of miliary tuberculosis. The New York Times reported on March 28, 1892, after his death, that his lungs were destroyed, but also his heart was surrounded by a large number of small abscesses and about 2.5 quarts of water. So, that sucks.
Interesting.
This may seem like an older disease, and it is one of the oldest. But tuberculosis still has the title for being the largest cause of death by a single pathogen today.
Wow. Okay.
It still infects about 2 billion people per year.
Did you say billion with a B? What?
And it kills about 3 million of those infected each year.
2 billion are infected.
Yeah.
I read that is staggering.
One statistic that I didn't include here because I thought it would be confusing was 1 in 3 people. But I was like, because in my mind, I'm very literal. I put like 3 people in a room and I'm like, well, I've been friends with these 2 people. None of us have gotten tuberculosis. I always think that way.
Sure.
But the reason why you can't look at it that way is because of the sort of unequal, it's like the inequality of where it's at. So like obviously,
100%.
like there's going to be more cases in certain places.
Yeah, the
cases
third
in
world.
places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The less modernized a particular country or area is, the less access they have to medical care.
It comes down to those who have access not just to medical care, but like sanitary conditions and those kinds of
all
things.
the things.
Also nutrition.
Yeah. Totally. I remember years ago when Bono, the front man from U2, they got on a mission with Africa, like the whole country.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, they were obviously extremely rich and famous at that point. This is like the late 90s. And like, I remember him being on Oprah and he was like, we can't just watch an entire continent burst into flames while we all stood around with watering cans. And I was like, what a great way to say that. Like it hit me for the first time. Like, oh, that could totally happen to an entire continent. And
and I feel like here it's easy to be distracted away from what's going on in the rest of the world, which is probably why you didn't realize that it still infects about 2 billion people per year. A lot of people don't know.
That is an astronomical rate of infection.
And you have to remember too that there's other illnesses and circumstances that allow for tuberculosis to be more common as well, such as HIV infection, war, famine, and the more if there are countries that are going through these particular circumstances more so than others, or like right now, obviously there's parts of the world that are dealing with heavy amounts of famine and war. And
that's, and this is kind of a soapbox, but like, this is why it's tough as healthcare workers to see misinformation or disinformation regarding medical science just spread like wildfire in the United States. In our case, there's no shortage of access to, we have our issues with our healthcare system, but we have antibiotics, we have clean water, we have all these things. And then you see narratives get formed from left field where it's like, no, that's why, like, people want to say that such and the tired argument of vaccines causing autism, etc., stuff like that. It's like, y'all, do you understand the toll, the sheer human cost of regular preventable disease across the world? Like that, it just kills me when I hear this stuff that stuff we thought we laid to rest 50, 60 years ago.
100 years ago.
100 years ago. And it's like, no, you need a measles vaccine. You need that.
Well, people haven't lived in a time where measles was a problem.
Exactly.
Or polio.
Yes.
We do not want polio to come back. They're
culturally disconnected from the actual cost, the actual toll of these diseases.
Measles I remember, like I said before, I think in one of our episodes, a lady arguing with me, a nurse, that measles doesn't kill anybody. I'm like, it does.
Jesus Christ.
It does.
Are you joking?
It can actually cause a lot of disability too. Not everybody dies, but you don't get to like pick and choose.
I mean, it's not about strictly the fatality rate. It's about what it could do to you if you're left alive.
Not to mention, a lot of people don't know the whole thing behind herd immunity too, because even if you or your child is vaccinated against measles, there's still a 10% chance of them catching it. So if we're all vaccinated, it's not a problem. If we're all vaccinated, and I understand that there are people who may have sensitivities or but that's the point of herd immunity being a thing, is to protect them as well.
For the sake of the people who cannot be safely vaccinated.
Yes.
And that happens. That is a thing.
So if you have a group who is vaccinated and then you have like another group that's not, the group that's vaccinated can still catch it, because I mean, it's less likely, but measles is one of the most contagious diseases that we know about. It is incredibly contagious. And not to mention also, like, I fear for, sure, we have, especially for bacterial infections, we may have treatments, but bacteria evolve too. And
They do.
we're going to have a hard time with bacteria resistant or antibiotic resistant bacteria.
Mhm.
We're already having a hard time with antibiotic resistant bacteria. And we're going to talk about that with tuberculosis too.
Yeah.
Later on. But
so all that to say, it's just, as a healthcare worker, we, day in, day out, I am going to go out today and see people who are stuck in their homes because of illness.
Mm-hmm.
That's the definition of doing home healthcare, which is what I've been doing for the last 13 years. People just disconnect. It's a combination of, the internet and people not having self-awareness, failure of the public education system, and just and the bad actors, the predatory people who build platforms based on misinformation, disinformation. It makes you want
Darn you, Facebook.
It makes you want to put your head through a wall. It's the death of expertise. Anybody wearing my scrubs and my name badge, it's like, well, we're suspicious of you immediately. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Why am I here?
Can I leave? Like, this isn't, and it goes again. It's like it's an epistemological or epistemic crisis, which basically means we don't know what we know for sure anymore. In general, people just don't know how we know what we know or if we know it for sure. There's just, like, anybody with expertise is immediately met with suspicion or a conspiracy theory. It's like, brother, I did not get my doctorate on Facebook, man.
Yeah, I mean.
Anyways, I had to get some stuff off my chest. It's too much.
For me, I'm like, you know what? Because having worked in the hospital, I'm like, if you don't want to take the medicine, then die. Yes. Okay. I'm like, here's my thing though. Like, it's your choice. And that's fine. You're not, as long as you're not hurting anybody else. If you would rather get this disease and die from it, then. And
in those instances,
then that's your choice, I guess. But
exactly. We'll put you in a body bag. We'll take you down to the morgue. No problem.
And I've done that.
Exactly. So. And in the cases, but the insane thing about infectious disease situations is their choices do affect everybody else around.
They do.
That's what drives
when it's not.
You up the wall.
When you're not in an isolation part of a hospital, it doesn't.
Like, if you want to disregard all medical instruction, just don't leave your house. It'll be fine.
Yeah. Well,
that's not going to happen.
They're equating it. A lot of people have been equating it to control. Like, you're trying to control me, and it's like technically we're trying to protect people. So it's this sort of misunderstanding of motive too, I think.
Yeah, of course. Of course. People think that my medical instructions are a political statement.
Yeah. I have no intention or no desire to control anybody.
No.
Like, that is not, like, you know how much work that sounds like? No. Absolutely not. It's not, and then, like, when I say that stuff about being in the hospital and, like, letting them choose what they want to do, it's not because I don't care.
No, it's just I can't force you.
No.
I understand your boundaries as an individual. You can do this. You can totally choose to do that.
You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Yeah.
So
it's fine.
I don't. Okay. I'm not going to waste my energy.
Yeah.
As long as you're informed. If you want to drink the radium water, that's fine.
Do it, bro.
But as long as you're informed.
Yeah. Back to the episode.
Anyway. So, yeah, it's still out there. Historically, it has infected those of any background, the rich, the poor, well-to-do nations, and poorer nations alike. Now, obviously, as we said before, you're going to see it probably more in the poorer nations, nations where there's higher rates of certain diseases or famine, those kinds of things.
That you see that correlation with poverty, even in modern nations such as the U.S.
Yeah. Now, about 1 in 10 infected will become ill with the disease, like an active disease. 1/2 of those with active disease will die within 5 years without treatment, which was non-existent until the mid-1940s in the form of antibiotics. The other 9 in 10 infected will have inactive TB, which is the latent form that can rear its ugly head later if not treated. Mm-hmm. We talked about it forming those tubercles. But yeah, signs and symptoms of active TB are a cough that lasts more than 3 weeks, starting dry but becoming productive, fever, loss of appetite, weight loss, weakness, chest pain, swollen glands, body aches, swollen joints, abdominal and pelvic pain, coughing up blood, constipation, dark or cloudy urine, headache, headache, generally feeling
Is that a dry
unwell.
cough I sense?
What?
Is that a dry cough I sense?
No.
Okay.
Generally feeling unwell. And like a lot of this sounds like, so flu-like symptoms. Yeah, but I imagine like when you start having chest pain and you're coughing up blood, that's a pretty big
it's gonna evolve into
or if you've
something
known
more.
someone that you've been around recently that's had TB, it's a good thing to get checked just to make sure you don't. Yeah.
It's nothing to play around with.
No. Now, we mentioned earlier that the DNA of the bacteria that causes tuberculosis was found in mummies thousands of years old. They had their own remedies for the disease, just as they did for any such illness. The Ebers Papyrus, which was an old, important Egyptian medical treatise from around like 1550 BC, really old, describes a pulmonary consumption that was associated with the cervical lymph nodes. It recommended that it be treated with the surgical lancing of the cyst and the application of a ground mixture of acacia, peas, fruits.
Okay, you said acacia, like Matthew Berry. Acacia.
Acacia.
I'd pronounce it acacia.
Acacia.
You went hard into that.
I did.
That soft C sound.
I don't regret
acacia.
it. I don't regret it.
I've been double crossed by the devil.
Also, animal blood, insect blood, yeah, honey and salt. Ouch. Tuberculosis would later be called consumption due to its effects on the body and the term for the disease in Latin, which was consumptio. Yeah,
it's my favorite spell from Harry Potter.
Consumptio. Could you imagine that? Oh my God. Like I said earlier, though, it wasn't called tuberculosis until given the name in the 1800s. But for ease of understanding, bear with me as I just refer to it as such, because we know what tuberculosis is. So I'm going to kind of go between consumption and tuberculosis, but I'm talking about the same thing.
Okay.
In the East, in India specifically, the disease is referenced in the Vedas, their religious texts. And there's multiple Vedas as Yaxma in one place and Balasa in another. So it has but the point is, it's been around this long. An Indian text on medicine, which was written around 200 to 500 CE, it recommended that the disease be treated with breast milk, various meats, alcohol, and rest.
Okay.
Another book of the Vedas advised those infected to move to higher altitudes, likely for the drier air, I'm guessing. Like maybe the drier air helps with the cough.
Is it maybe the decreased barometric pressure makes it easier to breathe?
Maybe.
Yeah.
The air is a little thinner, as I say. In China, one ancient medical text known as the Huangdi Beijing, which was reportedly written by the Yellow Emperor, which is this mythical ruler. And to some, he was this deity figure in traditional Chinese religions. There's a lot of beliefs and lore surrounding this figure, and he's still very popular there today for various reasons. But in this text, tuberculosis is described as Zhuolao Bing, which just basically means weak consumptive disease, with the symptoms of abnormal appearance, likely pale, skin, loss of weight, persistent cough and weak, fast pulse, fever, shortness of breath, and obstructed breathing. It was written about further over various dynasties, and at one time it was referred to what is translated in English as corpse disease due to its deadly nature. Basically, it turns you into a corpse pretty quickly. Well, not quickly, but you waste away until you become a corpse, basically. Taoist priests attempted to treat the disease with various drugs and herbal remedies, acupuncture, and burning talismans called fulus. So that's fun.
Not to be confused with hulu.
Hulu? Like the TV streaming thing. Yeah.
Real quick, before we move on, we're both wearing Grinch Christmas pants.
We are. Just one of them days.
Yep.
Loathe entirely.
Hate.
In medieval Europe, and we've discussed medieval Europe, so hang in there with me, but they were still working with humors, so which is not very humorous.
It's not.
So it was widely believed that a cold humor descended to the lungs from the head. That's how they thought, this happened.
Hmm.
We also discussed pretty early on something called the royal touch. That was believed to be healing. So like a royal would touch you and you'd be healed.
Gosh, I just love the delusion that
Yeah.
that the monarchies were able to live in during those times. It's amazing.
There was even a book of common prayer of the Anglican Church from the early mid 1600s that explained a royal touch ceremony. Like there was a whole ceremony behind it. It didn't work. So
you're kidding.
They did lie and say it did work for some people, but it didn't work.
This is why church and state are separate.
In Hungary at this time, there was an inquisition going on. It's another reason why church and state are separate. And it was recorded that there was a belief in a dog-shaped demon that possessed people and ate their lungs.
Listen, don't come for the dogs just because you're mad.
I know. They did it with the cats too.
Oh, right.
Jerks. Coughing meant that the
cats deserve it. I regret nothing.
Oh, come on.
I'm kidding. I choose the bear.
Can I pet that dog?
Okay.
Coughing meant the dog was barking and was close to finishing off his prey.
Okay.
Anyway. Into the 17th century, there would be more and more debate on the cause and origin of the disease, with some believing that all colds just become tuberculosis at some point, which is false, of course. As well as the tubercle itself being the cause, as if it were some sort of cancer, I guess. Like it just forms and that's what's causing it.
I can see them thinking that.
Yeah.
It
was first proposed in 1720 by English physician Benjamin Martin that some microorganism was causing it. Like he called it something different, but he was like, the small animals in there causing it. So microorganism.
Well,
of course, this was rejected because germ theory wouldn't be popular until much later. But about 162 years later, Robert Koch, of course, would prove this was indeed true.
Wow. I'm wondering how Ben Martin came to that conclusion so early.
Well, imagine of course, you're dead at this point and being vindicated and be like, oh my God, I told you. But tuberculosis became more and more common in the 18th and 19th centuries as more rural workers, I can't say the two R's there, moved to bigger cities for work and other needs. A study by William Woolcombe in 1808 revealed that between the years 1790 and 1796, there were 1,571 deaths in Bristol. 683 of them were from the consumption or from tuberculosis.
Mm-hmm.
It was also found that 1 in approximately 4 deaths in London in the early 19th century were due to consumption. Between 1851 and 1910, about 4 million died of TB in London and Wales, many of them young, between 15 and 35. One name given to the disease at this time was robber of youth, because it can just,
That's appropriate.
It strikes young people and robs them of their youth.
Yeah.
Slowly and miserably. In America, in the late 18th and early 19th centuries, New Englanders became paranoid that something supernatural was to blame for the sickness.
The devil.
Sort of. Vampires.
No.
Well, hang on. We got to go back just a little bit. So vampires have been a part of folklore for thousands of years, long before the 18th, 19th century, though they were probably more likely popularized later by Bram Stoker's novel Dracula, written in 1897. The myth likely showed up in Eastern Europe near Bulgaria. The earliest known reference to vampires was in 1047 in Old Russian and was called an upir, or an upior. So, which in Serbia translated as vampire. So, the name eventually.
Okay. Okay.
Originally, upirs were people who were cursed before or after death, or who were killed suddenly. Other reasons one might become one include death by suicide, an animal jumping over your dead body. Not sure why, but okay. Unchristened children, death in childbirth, witches, of course, and being killed by another upior. I'm not even sure if I'm saying this name correctly. Upior. There's actually, it's like it's spelled slightly different in different languages. And so, yeah.
So like if you're familiar and then your master finally decides to turn you into a vampire.
Not you, Guillermo.
Not you, Guillermo.
So, yeah, there are numerous other ways and superstitions attached to it, but you get the idea. Also, like during the whole witchcraft hunt, if you were different looking at all, like being redheaded, left-handed, having a limp, you had certain skin markings, birthmarks or moles, different looking teeth, a big head, or having a unibrow could even get you accused. Could even get you accused of being an oupir. They were believed to haunt and harass their families and neighbors, and sometimes suffocating them, ripping them to shreds with their superhuman strength, and drinking their blood. So, yeah, vampires, as we would know them today.
The vampires.
Yeah, so any illness that caused fatigue, pallor, that pale complexion, and vomiting or coughing up blood, yeah, they were like oupiers. So this was not a new concept when those in the 18th and 19th century in New England started noticing this illness ravaging their villages. The afflicted had sunken dark eyes, pale skin, and sometimes blood around their mouth from coughing,
right,
and such. So stories of vampires began to freak everyone out. Some began believing that the dead were returning to feed on the living, afflicting and killing others slowly. This obviously was not the case, but they became so paranoid that they would dig up bodies to see if any still looked fresh. Like in my mind, I'm like,
okay.
But like, are they coming out of? Are they digging themselves up every night? And because wouldn't you notice something around the grave? Like, oh, it's kind of weird. What are these markings? Huh? Or do they just float out and then become, I don't know, physical again? Because like, if they're not corporeal, is that how you say it? Corporeal.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not a physical form, they can't attack you. So if they're attacking you, if they're feeding off of you, then they must be a physical form, right? I'm thinking this is how this, like in my head, the logic just doesn't.
It's not. There's lots of holes here.
Like, are they digging themselves out of? Because like, if they're in a crypt, maybe they're just like opening it up and coming out. But if they're in the ground, can you do? I mean, that's like a lot of dirt on top of you. Anyway, I'm thinking about this way too much. But they were paranoid, so they dug them up, or would like open their tombs, crypts, whatever. They would literally cut the corpses open, and if they found blood still inside the person, they burned the organs and fed the ashes to living relatives as a cure or preventative to the illness.
Oh man.
Ew. Just let me die.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some bodies would also be decapitated, because if they can't have their head, I guess they can't do those things. Like there's actually been some like grave sites that were dug up and you'll see like the head between like the person's thighs or whatever, the skull is between the legs because they decapitated it because they didn't want it to come back to life.
Right.
Anyway, there are different, like there's also like I've seen like them dig up these graves where they'll have like the scythes like over the neck, so if they get up, I guess it cuts their head off. And like locks on their toes for some reason. It's look, superstition. It gets weird, but there we are. One such case of consumption / tuberculosis being mistaken for vampirism was that of Mercy Brown and her family during 1892. Mary Eliza and George Brown lived with their children in Rhode Island when the disease struck most of the family. Mary Eliza, the mom, died first from what we know now was tuberculosis, followed soon after by their eldest daughter, Mary Olive, in 1884. In 1891, the daughter Mercy and son Edwin became sick with the same illness, and Mercy died in 1892, so like a year later.
Mm-hmm.
The town began to believe the problem was supernatural, as it was just taking out each family member, and they had to have been like the undead that was causing this.
Of course.
I mean, because I guess they're not thinking like, oh, this is a disease and it's contagious. Like that wasn't
No, that hadn't entered their mind
Yeah,
yet.
that was no there was no theory about that. Or if it was, they hadn't heard about it or believed it. So instead, it was the undead. Yeah, I don't think they were specifically using the term vampire at this time, but same concept. So George Brown gave permission to dig up the bodies of his wife and 2 daughters to inspect. Mary Eliza and Mary Olive had decomposed as many believed they should have, so they were put back to rest, right? Mercy Brown, the second daughter, however, looked quite fresh and still had blood in her heart when they opened her up. I mean, duh, she had not been dead as long as the mom or the older sister. Like, she had just died in January and then was dug up that same March of that year. Also, it's Rhode Island in the wintertime leading up to her exhumation, right? Or her. So,
wow.
like, that crypt.
In Rhode Island?
Yeah, like that crypt she was in would have been pretty darn cold, and that's probably likely what preserved her body pretty well up until then. Anyway, Mercy was judged to be undead, however, and feeding on her brother. But my thing is, like, they both got sick around the same time, even though she died. Okay, you know what? I'm thinking about this too much already. Like, they probably would, like, I'd be talking about this. I'd be like, wait a minute, asking questions, and they would probably be like, well, you're a witch. So, anyway. So her heart and liver were burned, and the ashes, they were fed to her brother, mixed in water, to ward off this evil disease or whatever.
Wow.
He died 2 months later.
Okay.
So there's that.
Yeah.
The dad, however, never caught the illness. The story is actually said to be part of the inspiration for Bram Stoker's Dracula, because they actually found clippings of articles about this story around his house after his death. So that's interesting that the news traveled that far too. So now it has also inspired or been referenced to in other stories, including H.P. Lovecraft's The Shunned House. So, that particular story has inspired quite a few morbid, I don't want to say retellings, but it's inspired some other literature. While it was seen with great superstition during the 18th and early 19th century in most places, it became viewed quite different later in the 19th century, because by the mid 19th century, tuberculosis had reached epidemic levels in Europe and in the U.S. The disease, while killing so many people, became a sort of romance tragedy trope, especially in opera and literature, poetry, art. The character Mimi in Puccini's La Bohème, for example, or Fantine in Victor Hugo's Les Miserables. Also, it's believed that the reason for Quasimodo's back problems in The Hunchback of Notre Dame was caused by tuberculosis eating away at his spine.
Really?
Yeah, that's what it's, yeah. Interesting. We said interesting at the same time.
Soulmates.
Oh my God. There are tons of examples in literature during this period of tuberculosis as this tragic romantic idea. So, yeah, I'm sure if you read anything during that period, there's likely a character that has tuberculosis. I'm sure we've all seen movies or television shows with a character that had tuberculosis. I mean, Doc Holliday.
The aforementioned Doc Holliday. And
also, I'm trying to think. Any kind of Victorian, like, dark romance kind of situation died.
How about Tommy from Bleak House? Do you remember? He kept jumping from profession to profession.
Yeah.
And then he
I know Dickens. I know in one of Dickens' books there was someone who died of tuberculosis or had tuberculosis. I can't think of the name of it now. It's like one of those funny names. He was always funny about names. Anyway, yeah. So you don't have to look too far to find something either written in that period or about that period to do with tuberculosis. John Keats wrote, the poet, in 1819, "Youth grows pale and spectre thin and dies." So it's just kind of reference to the beauty of that time being sort of inspired by tuberculosis. Edgar Allan Poe described his young wife as being delicately, morbidly angelic as she lay dying of consumption.
You would describe it that way.
Emily Bronte, is it Bronte?
Mhm.
Yeah. Emily Bronte described the tuberculosis heroine in Wuthering Heights as rather thin, but young and fresh complexioned, and her eyes sparkled like diamonds. So, as such, beauty standards of the day actually followed this trend. So, pale skin, rosy flushed cheeks, making you look feverish, I guess. Thin shape, so like what the disease does to you is the poor appetite, the weight loss. But, they're like, yeah, that's trendy. That was all the rage. It was literally fashionable to look as if you were dying of tuberculosis. That's, at this time.
You told me that. This was a couple of years ago, and I was shocked.
It's interesting. I read a source that referred to it as consumptive chic. So there's that. And women were wearing these tighter corsets and using makeup, arsenic to be exact, to make themselves look pale. We've discussed a little bit.
And poisoning themselves.
Yeah. We've actually, we've talked a little bit about arsenic being in some of the makeup and skincare at the time, like the Fowler solution. Yeah. So, and for the illusion of feverish cheeks and lips, more makeup there. Romantic poet Lord Byron, interesting fellow. He actually joked to a friend once that he wished to die of consumption so that the ladies would find him more interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, having consumption at this time, however, was nothing to want or to joke about. This was still before they even knew what caused it. Still believing in bad air, so to speak, humors. So treatments during this time might include rest, moving to a location with better air, various diets, sunlight therapy, literally and we could actually talk about later, how tanning became kind of the new trend because people were prescribing getting sunlight therapy for certain illnesses. Just go lay out in the sun. What they didn't know about back then was skin cancer.
Right.
Or if they did, it wasn't, well talked about or researched. So anyway. But also sometimes involved surgical collapsing of the affected lung or lungs so that they could rest and heal the organs. Literally, They would literally go in and just cause the lungs to collapse. Yeah. Or they would insert something in there of a, like the tennis balls you use in a, all I can think of now is the movie Up. Mr. Fredrickson's got the tennis balls on his little walker. Yeah. And they could insert something of that sort of material or shape to kind of keep the lung at the smaller capacity at all time. Yeah. So they were looking for ways to either remove parts of the lung, make it collapse, or keep it in restricted. Yeah, they thought that was the best course of action. So
wow.
And I imagine because antibiotics and sterilization stuff wasn't in as much yet, people could die from infection just from having that done. So that doesn't sound fun. But I don't want to get too deep into more remedies right now because I do want to talk about sanatoriums for tuberculosis patients and all that next week because it was a big sort of treatment trend as well. And there was just some interesting stuff to talk about with that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, next time we'll also talk about the discovery of a test. And I don't want to get into it now, but it was a complicated situation. So I'll explain it then. As well as a vaccine and antibiotics, as well as the complications not too long after with antibiotic resistance, which we can kind of go into that a little bit next week too. And also some modern issues concerning tuberculosis, nowadays. So yeah, next week will be interesting as well. As old and as lethal as tuberculosis has been, I thought it deserved 2 episodes. I mean, if the bubonic plague got 2, the White Death should as well, right? This is one of the oldest,
if you're gonna do it justice,
deadliest illnesses, and we don't really talk about it as much anymore. A lot of people are like tuberculosis. That's that thing that people used to get. No, people get it now, and it's still deadly, very deadly. And so I think John Green, he's actually got a book or something coming out.
About to start a book tour for his newest book. It is called "Everything Is Tuberculosis."
Yeah, he's really he is all about tuberculosis and talking about it, and which is really great because it's really great because most people don't think about tuberculosis and how it continues to affect humanity. So yeah, but I mean, like,
sure, his book is great.
Because I had a patient one time, I think they were in for suspected tuberculosis and isolation precautions and stuff like that. And it's like, you had to go through 2 doors to get to them. And, you know, it's a mess. It's not a fun, and it takes a long time for treatment too, typically.
Yeah.
So, and if treatment works, well, we'll talk about all that next week because there's a lot to go on next week.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for listening so much, and we will see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye-bye.